So first of all, I want to congratulate the winners and just say that I was actually kind of pleased to discover that I've visited 9 of them. And in fact, when I went to visit the Big Y, what I really wanted to watch was what went on inside the warehouse early in the morning. So I went at 5 a.m. And got the tour through the place and a sense about how they actually literally load and unload the warehouse, the whole thing, every single day. And I also had a chance at one time to visit White Lion. Where are they? They got a heck of a product, those guys. Just behave if you go and pay them a visit. And Analog Devices, I must say, I go back to Analog Devices in the 1980s, a completely different life for most of you. And I watched that company in a space that's enormously competitive, where the global players are large and in charge, and Analog has continued to outperform all of them, literally for almost 60 years. Think about that. Here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And in 1984, plus or minus, I actually watched people operate a fabrication facility. And I'm actually kind of curious to know if I would be allowed to go back to see if what I remember about how that process worked. Okay, I just want to see if that process, as I remember how it worked, literally 35 years ago, still works the same today. I'm expecting it's probably a little different. And in many ways, I wasn't kidding. Shannon was right. I basically said, holy, what a video. Because the last couple of years, let's face it, have been enormously challenging for everybody. And I sort of had a ringside seat for a lot of the challenges that came with the pandemic and the fallout and all the rest. And I saw many astonishing things happen over that period of time. And I saw many organizations go way above and beyond on behalf of their neighbors and their colleagues and their communities to help us all work our way through this thing. And honestly, it was, in some ways, a little bit of therapy for me. We used to have a call every Tuesday night. A lot of us governors would get on the phone and talk. And the call started around 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time because the folks on the West Coast, it would be 5 o'clock. And sometimes it lasted an hour, but sometimes it literally lasted 2 or 3 hours. And it would mostly be a free-form discussion. It wasn't moderated. There was no script. And we would just talk to each other about all of the various challenges and issues we were dealing with and how many of us were going about trying to work our way through them. And I used to hang up that phone and I would go find my wife if she was still awake. And I would say, I am so glad that I am the governor of Massachusetts, because the stories that I would hear about the challenges people faced in other parts of the country were very different than the challenges we faced here. And I'll give you one simple example based on this facility right here. There are 1 million people who got vaccinated in this site, okay? The organizations that did that vaccination activity were basically created out of whole cloth at the beginning of the pandemic. And they had dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers who were always there to help with whatever piece of the process people needed help with. And I think most people know that all 3 of the vaccines, the J&J, the Pfizer vaccine, and the Moderna vaccine, were birthed through research organizations here. Now, I talked to a lot of governors in a lot of other states who had trouble getting people to volunteer to do much of anything. I mean, we were running food programs all the way through the first 5 or 6 months of the pandemic, where never once did we struggle to get people to come out and help. And just time and time again, I saw with my own eyes Every single day in the midst of about as high anxiety a time as you could possibly imagine. The greatness, the humanity, and the brilliance of the people of this state and the organizations they populate. And honestly, if I take nothing else away from the pandemic, it's going to be that. Because I think sometimes we're very hard on ourselves. We set really high expectations. We expect to overperform. And there are plenty of people around, because it's Massachusetts, who will tell us if we don't. We're here where the Patriots are. I mean, they've won 7 Super Bowls. Give or take, is it 6? All right. Brady won 7. So here's my point. They've won 6 Super Bowls. Are we happy? We set the bar really high. I mean, when the Celtics were 500, I don't know about you, but my phone was exploding with people who said, I'll never watch them again. And now they have a shot to go all the way. We expect to win. We expect to play hard. We expect to overperform. And we're really tough on ourselves. But I would hope you would all recognize and understand that our business community, our nonprofits, our community organizations, really in many respects did some amazing things, nation-leading things, all the way through the pandemic. And happened to be the place where the 3 major vaccines that were used in the US, most of the important research was done. It's a pretty cool place we live in, which is why it's so nice to have this opportunity to celebrate some of the truly great companies, new and old, across our Commonwealth that have done great things under a very difficult period with enormously challenging circumstances across a wide variety of industries. How many times are you going to get a chip fabricator and a beer manufacturer in the same award ceremony? I, for one, thought that did a pretty good job of saying everything you need to know about the Commonwealth. And I would just close with this. We have enormous challenges coming out of the pandemic. No question about that. We have huge issues around mental health. We have big issues around learning loss. We have big issues around workforce. We have big challenges with supply chain. Everybody's pro forma on everything has probably had to go through 5 or 6 rewrites because of inflation. And it will be, as a result, a very challenging couple of years. But I have no doubt that the creativity, ingenuity, and discipline and diligence that the people that this state will bring to the table, people of this state will bring to the table, will find a way. We'll deal with the housing issues, which are real. I mean, they're real. I remember when Amazon came to do their final visit before they picked their second world headquarters on the East Coast. They came to Massachusetts. We were one of the 5 states that was left in the hunt. This is 5 years ago, maybe. And they left, and when they left, they said, look, you got a ton of talent here. It's a great location. The airport rocks. But your housing issue is profound. I mean, we're from the West Coast. We have housing problems out there. You make ours seem not so bad by comparison. And then where did they go? New York City. That was their first choice. And when that didn't happen, metropolitan Washington, D.C. Now, we managed to get legislation passed in the last session that will make it dramatically easier for communities to build housing. It's already helped a lot of communities take proposals back to the table that they couldn't get approved previously and get them approved under the new rules. We've put hundreds of millions of dollars into housing production. We'll put hundreds of millions more. It is in my opinion, it is the existential threat we face. Because if you can't make it possible for the people in their 20s and 30s to say they can afford to be here, in this world we live in, where there's so much opportunity for people to live and work in a whole variety of different ways, it's an enormous challenge. But I happen to think it's one we'll deal with, because that's what we do. And in closing, I just would say this. Mass Econ, which I got to know when I was a candidate in 2014, when I ran for the second time for governor, is a really special organization that has terrific relationships with state agencies and does something very unusual. They celebrate companies that come to Massachusetts. They thank them for being here. They support them if they're new. And then they recognize and honor great companies that are doing wonderful things across the Commonwealth. It's an enormously positive organization. I'm bummed that somehow I missed one of these events. You sure it wasn't canceled and I just... Okay. But I thank all of you for being here to support it, because they make a really big difference. They roll out the red carpet. They are, in fact, in many ways, for a lot of organizations that are thinking about being here or expanding here, they are in many ways a big part of that first impression, the front door, and they do great work. And I just want to congratulate them and thank all of you for being here, and I hope you have a terrific 22, because let's face it, after 2020 and 2021, 2022 needs to be a big step forward. Thank you.